Imagine a kitchen at 3 in the morning. The lights are off, the house is silent, and in the dark, beneath the refrigerator, behind the stove, inside the cracks in the walls, thousands of small bodies move without making a sound. You never see them during the day. They have learned to avoid the light, to avoid you, to sense the vibration of your footsteps on the floor before you even enter the room. And for more than 60 years, entire generations of this population have been surviving something that should have wiped them out: an unrelenting chemical war, waged inside ordinary homes in ordinary cities across the United States. This war has a winner, and it is not who you think. Welcome back to the Bug Files, the channel that shows you the world of insects is stranger, more dangerous, and more fascinating than you ever imagined. Today, the story is not about some exotic species from a distant rainforest. It is about an insect that is probably already inside your home, or the one next door, and that is, right now, evolving faster than the industry can fight it. The German cockroach. The name is misleading. The German cockroach is not from Germany. Until recently, no one knew where it actually came from. In 2024, a genomic study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, led by evolutionary biologist Chan Tang at Harvard University, solved a mystery that had persisted for 250 years. The team analyzed the DNA of 281 cockroaches collected across 17 countries on 6 continents. The answer: Blatella germanica evolved from another species, the Asian cockroach, Blatella asahini, roughly 2,100 years ago, most likely in the region that is now India or Myanmar. The Asian cockroach lives outdoors, flies well, and is attracted to light. The German cockroach did the exact opposite. It abandoned the wild and specialized in living inside human-built structures. It cannot truly fly. It does not survive outdoors in cold climates. It depends on us, on our homes, our kitchens, our plumbing. Linnaeus first described it in 1776 in Central Europe, which is how it got its name. The Germans, in turn, called it the Russian cockroach. The Russians called it the Prussian cockroach. Nobody wanted to claim it. When it reached the United States, it arrived the way it has always spread, by hitchhiking. In 1842, the construction of the Croton Reservoir brought indoor plumbing to New York City apartments. Running water brought warm, humid pipes threading through walls and floors. The perfect habitat. New Yorkers began calling the cockroach the Croton bug, convinced that the aqueduct itself had delivered the pest. From that point on, wherever plumbing went, Blatella germanica followed, and it never left. Today, the German cockroach is the most prevalent cockroach species on the planet. There are more than 4,600 known cockroach species. None is as successful in human environments as this one, and it is precisely that forced proximity, that cohabitation we never chose, that placed it at the center of one of the fastest evolutionary arms races ever documented in any animal. For decades, cockroach control relied on a logic that seemed solid. Rotate between different classes of insecticides so that no population could adapt to all of them at once. It was a rational strategy, grounded in basic principles of toxicology and resistance management. Researchers at Purdue University, led by entomologist Michael Scharf, decided to test that logic under real-world conditions. Low-income residential buildings in Danville, Illinois, and Indianapolis, Indiana. Over 6 months, 3 strategies were compared side by side. Monthly rotation among 3 distinct insecticide classes, a simultaneous mixture of 2 classes, and continuous use of a single product to which the local population showed low initial resistance. Before the study began, the team captured live cockroaches from each site and lab tested their resistance to 14 different active ingredients. The results were already alarming before the experiment started. Both sites showed broad resistance to nearly every chemical class available on the market. What happened over the following 6 months was published in the journal Scientific Reports and surprised even the researchers themselves. Most cockroach populations remained stable or simply grew, regardless of the strategy used. Rotation, mixture, single agent. Nothing worked consistently. The cockroaches were becoming resistant to multiple chemical classes simultaneously, a phenomenon scientists call cross-resistance. A single generation exposed to one insecticide was developing tolerance to others it had never encountered. The speed of this adaptation has a direct biological explanation, and it is this explanation that turns the problem from concerning to alarming. A German cockroach completes an entire generation, from egg to reproductive adult, in roughly 60 to 100 days. A single female can produce hundreds of offspring over her lifetime. This means that in less than a year, a resistance trait carried by one surviving female can spread through an entire colony. While a human generation spans 25 to 30 years, the German cockroach cycles through 4 or 5. In the same period it takes you to swap the insecticide on your shelf. What looks to us like a static, stubborn pest is in reality a population in continuous mutation, testing, generation after generation, whether it can survive the next round of chemicals. And most of the time, it can. The most surprising discovery in this arms race, however, does not involve chemical resistance in the traditional sense. It involves behavior, and it begins with something improbable: cockroaches that stopped liking sugar. For decades, the pest control industry used glucose-laced baits to lure cockroaches to their poison. The logic was simple. Cockroaches love sugar, and glucose is one of the most attractive sugars to them. The poison was embedded in the sweet bait. The cockroach ate it, died, problem solved, until it stopped working. Researchers at North Carolina State University, led by scientist Ayako Wada-Katsumata and entomologists Jules Silverman and Kobe Schall, discovered that a growing proportion of the population was simply refusing the bait. In a study published in the journal Science in 2013, the team identified the exact neural mechanism behind the behavior. In normal cockroaches, glucose activates gustatory neurons associated with sweet taste, exactly as expected. In cockroaches carrying the new trait, glucose simultaneously triggers the bitter taste neurons. For these individuals, sugar tastes repulsive. The most widely used bait on the market, designed to be irresistible, literally tastes like poison before it even is poison. The evolutionary explanation is direct and unforgiving. Cockroaches that ate the glucose in the baits died quickly before they could reproduce. Those that found glucose repulsive, because of a genetic variation that was once rare and irrelevant, survived and left offspring. Within a few generations, months, not centuries, glucose aversion went from an isolated mutation to a dominant trait across entire populations throughout the country. The 2013 study forced bait manufacturers to reformulate their products, removing glucose from their compositions. The industry adapted. So did the cockroach. In 2021, the same research group published a second finding that deepened the problem. The German cockroach's saliva contains enzymes that break down complex sugars, such as maltose and maltotriose, into glucose during digestion. This means that even baits formulated without glucose, but containing other sugars that decompose into glucose inside the insect's mouth, are rejected by cockroaches carrying the aversion trait. The field of evasion had widened. There is, however, a cost to this adaptation, and this is where the story reveals a layer that few would expect to find in cockroach research. Glucose is present in the nuptial secretions that the male offers the female during mating, part of the species' courtship ritual. Females with glucose aversion reject part of that offering, interrupt copulation earlier, and in some cases abandon the male before complete sperm transfer. The selection pressure we created with our baits is now altering the sexual dynamics of the species, pushing males to evolve secretions with different sugar ratios in order to retain some chance of mating with glucose-averse females. Kobe Schall, one of the lead researchers behind these studies, summed up the scenario in a line that captures the tone of this entire story. We are in a constant evolutionary battle with cockroaches, and that evolution can accelerate enormously in urban environments because the selection pressure we impose on these insects inside homes is extremely intense. And it was precisely during one of these studies on resistance genes that scientists found something they were not looking for. Michael Scharf, the same Purdue University researcher who led the cross-resistance study, published a paper in the journal Frontiers in Physiology in 2022 that revealed a disturbing detail. Cockroaches that had developed high insecticide resistance carried significantly fewer internal parasites than non-resistant cockroaches. The detoxification genes protecting them from insecticides appeared as a side effect to make them more resilient against the very parasites that normally inhabit their bodies. These resistant cockroaches were visibly healthier: long, straight antennae, glossy wings, signs of an organism free from parasitic infection. This matters for a reason that extends well beyond entomology. German cockroaches are one of the leading sources of indoor allergens in the United States. Their feces, saliva, and body fragments produce proteins, known as BLA-G1 and BLA-G2, that rank among the most potent asthma triggers in children. A landmark study published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 1997 demonstrated that asthmatic children in urban areas who were sensitive to cockroach allergens and exposed to high levels in their bedrooms had hospitalization rates 3.5 times higher than other asthmatic children. Cockroach allergens have been detected in 85% of low-income urban homes in the United States. 60 to 80% of asthmatic children in those communities show sensitization to these allergens. The cockroach populations hardest to control, the resistant ones, are concentrated in exactly these environments, where the resources to fight them are the most scarce. Resistance is not distributed equally. It accumulates where chemical pressure is most intense and least sophisticated. In low-income housing, where the same classes of cheap insecticides are used repeatedly, year after year, generation after generation of cockroaches. This scenario places the pest control industry and public health in a position no one planned for. Every insecticide application that fails to eliminate 100% of a colony selects the fittest survivors. Every bait a cockroach refuses expands the proportion of sugar-averse individuals in the next generation. Every product that loses efficacy pushes the population one step further toward broader, deeper, harder-to-reverse resistance. The species, already documented as resistant to at least 43 different active ingredients as of 2022, is becoming resistant to entire combinations of strategies. The logic of rotating insecticides, the same logic that sustained cockroach control for over half a century, is being outpaced by the brute arithmetic of reproduction and natural selection. There is no villain in this story, no deliberate decision on the part of those who developed these products. There is only the cold logic of evolution, operating on the shortest timescale it has ever had at its disposal. Weeks and months, where it once required millennia. Every time we apply an insecticide, every time we place a sugar-laced bait behind the refrigerator, we participate, unknowingly, in a real-time evolutionary experiment. 2,100 years ago, this species lived outdoors in southern Asia. Today, it exists on every inhabited continent on the planet, inside our buildings, resisting our chemical weapons, evolving on our schedule, and the German cockroach is, at this very moment, in some apartment in the United States, winning the next round. If this is the first time you have heard about evolution happening inside your own kitchen, subscribe to the Bug Files.